Ruby Driscoll, Sketchbook Flick-Through for the University of Brighton Level 4 illustration course. The cover for the book is almost entirely decorative, but a couple of the stickers have some relevance to the course. The sticker is the mark of the kindred of the Kibbo Kift, which is a group I looked into during my research, as well as an additional print of one of my test projects for the Booth Museum project, and an image that was related to my work on old-school computer graphics. The inside cover and first page contain work here that was looking at the Booth Museum project, including a photo of the group project we did creating our initial poster for the museum, as well as some additional sketches I was working on while developing my ideas. This page contains further collection of the reference images I was using while working on my project, as well as a slightly larger print of one of the designs I ended up not using, and some reflection I wrote at the time I was making it. This page contains a number of trial runs. I found that while working digitally using my iPad and the software Procreate, I was able to quickly create a large number of variations upon a similar idea, hence the large number of different outcomes pictured here. This page contains the final set of 3 outcomes for my Booth Museum project under the title Cartographers of Intrigue, as well as some reflection I wrote at the time. This is the first page of the new project titled When Worlds Collide, and it features the exercise we did in order to generate ideas, wherein we had to pick a number of words relating to both topics that we were going with, and then had to sort of randomly jostle them up to create new phrases that were designed to create inspiration. I picked some of the best ones I came up with and just glued them down as a visual record of the activity. There were also some preliminary sketching and a reflection I wrote at the time. This page and the one that follows it contain a visual record of the imagery I was looking into for inspiration when I was beginning the project. I began looking at strictly old-school computer graphics, hence this section which sort of goes a bit vaporwavy and contains original computer colours. I was then looking at 3D animation, especially old-school rudimentary with low polygons. I also had a memory of watching a show called Bamzuki as a child, whereby children were allowed to design rudimentary 3D animated creatures. So that's what a lot of this section is. And there's also a large area here where I was looking at the effect that CRT monitor display has on pixelated sprites, and how computers and TVs in the past were able to emulate a higher level of detail. This page begins to be more dedicated towards strictly heraldic imagery, which is what a lot of this is. I had an idea of looking at knights and the potential for the reflection of CMYK colours, the original computer colours. As you can see here, a lot of the imagery is very based on like MS Paint, Windows 95, that kind of thing. I looked at things other artists had done to sort of combine these worlds previously, so I've got pixel art banners of medieval type imagery. This is where I really started jotting down some of my original ideas for things. Here I was trying to create sort of flags and banners in a heraldic style, but using the colour schemes and some of the imagery from a more computer-based visual language. I also looked at an essay called The Functions of Heraldic Symbols in English Fiction, which was a very useful piece of information that I found while researching this topic. I've included an excerpt from it here. I also did some research into the symbolism of colours and created a preliminary little sketch here of like a vaporwave version of Camelot Castle. Here is some further research into the meaning behind symbolism, specifically that on crests and shields. And also an image I created of a Crusader helmet. I created this image as a way of basically trying to get colour into the reflection and playing around with that. So the original image I was referencing was not this green and gold and colourful. I played around with how I could introduce reflections to a fairly metallic, neutral surface, and that was the result. Here I have a page where I'm starting to create thumbnails, and my ideas developed to go towards a sort of screensaver type thing. I'm starting to think about animation. And you can see heraldic loading screen says screensaver, so I'm still trying to combine the worlds here. This knight was a later addition that was sellotaped in the book for safekeeping, but this page didn't originally feature him. You can see I'm looking at different backgrounds I could do. A lot of that was heavily inspired by different backgrounds I had. I was looking at here as well, and a point further on. But I was looking at what colours I could include, how best to do it. There's variations that had clouds rather than the sunset. This page is a record of my development of the animation process from the original sketches of the singular knight to how I developed that to how's it going to be moving, essentially. So I went with this process of sharpening a sword. I had particularly trouble with getting the angle right for the feet, so there's a few little extra sketches of that. This section here, the colour theorising, is basically, once I had the original knight design and the colours I knew I wanted to use, I had to go, okay, so how am I going to insert that into this environment with this colour scheme and have it still seem natural? Using my tablet and various filters applied to just photos and scans of the original image, I wanted to keep a limited colour palette, so I was using my same Posca pens for every image, and I used this piece of paper to, by hand, colour test, right, what's the closest pen to this, well, how can we match it, how can we develop this into a colour scheme that seems natural for the environment. That led to the development of several different test runs of colour schemes for the knight I wanted to go with, the closest of which on this page would be the central one. This would be the final design of the knight I wanted to use in a short video, including the shading. I had the inspiration for how to include the reflections in the helmet from this happy little accident here, which was an accidental inverted photocopy of the Crusader helmet drawing. And I found the colours that came up really interesting, so I incorporated a lot of the darker purple tones into the shading that I used on the knight itself. The background of this page was, before I covered it up, was used for painting. I did a lot of test versions, which you'll see shortly. I did a lot of test versions of the frames before I went on to fully committing them. So I worked out where I wanted the knight to be in the frame. These were all put together digitally and then just printed multiple times so that I would have something to test. But you can see here I tested having the colour scheme I'd come up with, having it be physically in the environment to see how that would look. You can see one of the older test sketches for the knights, and a plan I came up with and wrote down to make sure I actually stayed on track while I was working. I have a tendency to keep important bits of paper just loose in the book. But this is the final archive of various bits of visual research I had, so you can see how the shape of the knight costume was sort of developed. I had a lot of I took a lot of inspiration from the Merlin series and the design that their knights had, so there's a lot of record of my research on that here, as well as a few more sort of general backgroundy things I was looking at while creating the scene I wanted for the screensaver. You can see the colour scheme inspiration where a lot of that came from and the more vaporwave type stuff. So once I'd developed the frames and I knew what I was doing, I knew I wanted to have the frames hand painted, because I think when it actually creates the animation, it makes it seem a lot more alive to have, you know, in every individual frame, every paint stroke is in a slightly different place, that kind of thing, than if I were to simply just copy and paste it a bunch of times through Procreate or through a digital means and just generate lots of identical ones instantly. I think that helps me in the final outcome to make it look more alive. In order to achieve this effect, I hand drew every individual frame, which took a while. But this is every individual frame of the knights sharpening the sword. And you can see there's variation upon the level of reflection in the helmets. That's something I wanted to have changed to give a bit more detail to the animation. And pull those apart separately. Whoops. These were all completed in Posca. I like the paint pens. I think they're quite good for getting detail even on a fairly small scale like this. And for the background themselves, there are 13 of these frames, each one's hand drawn. I could make this almost a flick book to go through, and you'll just see the sun changing position. Each one was hand painted in just acrylic, and I was aiming to sort of recreate the Posca colours to give it a consistent feel. that is everything for physical in the bookwork for my When Worlds Collide illustration project.